Hello. We continue with one of the biggest scandals in modern religious history, the crimes of Theodore McCarrick, who rose to the top of the Catholic Church. This is part 3. Let's begin with those at the center of this tragedy, the victims. The Vatican's McCarrick Report, released in November 2020, confirmed that Theodore McCarrick abused at least 17 post-pubescent boys or young men over decades, often exploiting his position as priest, bishop, and cardinal to groom and manipulate them. Some victims were as young as 12. These were not isolated incidents. They stretched from the 1960s through the 2000s. One of the most prominent victims was James Grein. He alleged that McCarrick began abusing him in 1967, when he was just 11, during a Christmas party at a New Jersey parish. McCarrick, then a young priest, took Grein aside under the pretense of guidance, but the encounter turned predatory. Over the next 2 decades, Grein said the abuse continued, often during trips or retreats where McCarrick used his authority as priest and later bishop. A heartbreaking detail, Grein claimed he told Pope John Paul II about the abuse in a meeting in Rome in 1988. Grein, then 29, was part of a group invited to meet the Pope, and he used the opportunity to reveal McCarrick's actions. The Vatican report does not confirm the meeting, but notes no action was taken, leaving Grein to suffer in silence for decades. "I told the Pope," Grein later told the Post, "and nothing happened. It broke my heart." Other victims echoed similar experiences. McCarrick targeted seminarians and young priests, often inviting them to his beach house in Sea-Girt, New Jersey, or to retreats where he arranged sleeping arrangements that put him in the same bed. He called himself Uncle Ted, framing his actions as paternal or pastoral. The Guardian highlighted the power imbalance. McCarrick wasn't just any priest. He held the power to make or break a seminarian's career. Refusing his advances could mean losing ordination or being sidelined. One victim, quoted in National Catholic Reporter, said, "You felt trapped. If you spoke up, you were finished." Many stayed silent, fearing they wouldn't be believed against such a powerful figure. The human cost was immense. The Vatican report acknowledged McCarrick's abuse caused deep spiritual and psychological harm, with some victims leaving the priesthood or the church entirely. Peter Isley, a survivor and leader in SNAP, the survivors' network of those abused by priests, told the New York Times, "McCarrick's victims are not just numbers in a report. We are still here, still living with the damage he caused."
The 2018 revelations. For decades, McCarrick's crimes stayed in the shadows, ignored or dismissed by the Church. But in June 2018, the Archdiocese of New York announced it had found a credible and substantiated allegation that McCarrick had abused a minor in the 1970s, when he was a priest in New York. The New York Times reported the details. A former altar boy said McCarrick molested him while preparing for a Christmas pageant at St. Patrick's Cathedral. Until 2018, most known allegations involved seminarians, adults, not minors, framed by the Church as moral lapses rather than crimes. But abuse of a minor crossed a clear line, especially after the Boston Globe's 2002 investigation forced stricter church policies on child abuse. The New York Times noted that this revelation shocked the Catholic world, as McCarrick, then 87 and retired, was one of the most recognizable faces of American Catholicism.
The New York announcement opened the door for other victims to speak out, including James Grein, who went public in July 2018. His testimony was crucial, linking McCarrick's abuse to his years as both priest and bishop. By August 2018, more allegations emerged about his coercive tactics. In June 2018, Pope Francis suspended McCarrick from public ministry. In July 2018, he stripped him of his cardinal title. By February 2019, the Vatican defrocked him completely. National Catholic Reporter called it a historic moment, signaling the Church's new resolve to confront high-ranking abusers. The McCarrick scandal shook American Catholicism and reverberated globally. It was a watershed moment in the Church's worldwide reckoning with sexual abuse, following scandals in Chile, Australia, and Germany. The Vatican's 2020 report, commissioned by Pope Francis, was a direct response, marking the first time the Vatican published such a comprehensive investigation of one of its own.
The 449-page report laid out McCarrick's abuse, the Church's failures, and the role of 3 popes in enabling his rise. The New York Times called it an unprecedented act of transparency, but noted its limits. It mainly blamed John Paul II, imposed no new sanctions, and offered no structural reforms. For Catholics worldwide, McCarrick's case was a turning point, exposing the Church's credibility crisis. In the U.S., pews emptied as trust collapsed. A 2019 Gallup poll, cited by The Guardian, found only 31% of U.S. Catholics trusted church leadership, down from 46% a decade earlier. The scandal also reignited debates about systemic issues. National Catholic Reporter published letters questioning whether John Paul II's 2014 canonization should be reconsidered, given his role in elevating McCarrick. Globally, the case amplified calls for reform. How can the Church prevent another McCarrick, and what will it do for victims? First, accountability. The Vatican report was a step toward transparency, but offered no concrete reforms. NCR argued the Church needs independent oversight, lay-led boards or external investigators to handle abuse claims. Otherwise, the cycle of cover-ups will continue.
Second, compensation. Victims like James Grein described lifelong impacts: depression, broken relationships, lost faith. The Vatican acknowledged the harm but offered no plan for redress. The New York Times noted some dioceses set up victim funds, but critics say they are inadequate or coercive, requiring non-disclosure agreements. The spiritual crisis. For millions of Catholics, the McCarrick scandal was not just a betrayal of trust, but a challenge to faith itself. Finally, leadership. Pope Francis did take steps, defrocking McCarrick, commissioning the report, and issuing new abuse reporting guidelines in 2019. But the voices of survivors remain central. They are the bravest of all. They spoke out in hopes of preventing future abuse. This is the final episode in our series on Theodore McCarrick. Please like and subscribe to our channel for more stories. See you next time. Our sources: the Vatican's 2020 McCarrick Report, investigations by the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Guardian, and National Catholic Reporter, and the voices of those who refuse to stay silent.